couple of things. Got two things I want to talk about. I want to talk about what happened yesterday with the what I would call carefully crafted language trying to mislead people. But the first thing I want to talk about is how right you were back when they hired this tax consultant. And you said, this is ridiculous. We have in-house resources. Then it came out that the tax consultant, who was fired 2 days ago, was a raging liberal, lifelong Democrat, contributed to Democrats. And so I just want to say you were correct initially. It was a waste of time, waste of money, and we now know that is a true statement.
Yeah, and I mean, Paul, I'm wrong a lot. I make mistakes, but down there you have experience. But first, let me say, now it's early in the morning. I'm a farmer. I get up early, and the first thing I have to, check, you would think would be the farm. And I'm a poultry cattle farmer, so you have to put up with a lot of, let's say, stuff. Unfortunately, I have to put up with political stuff. So the first thing I get up to is Jamie Barker, the spokesman for the Asa Hutchinson. I hope they're listening. I tweeted with you. I hope they're tuning in, and I hope they're listening.
Mm-hmm.
So they sit there, and they're trying to get in some little spat about the convention and Trump and Jan Morgan. Okay, forget about the budget and money. They're in a little fourth-grade squabble or something. I'm like, I didn't even get into it. I don't even care. What I care about is, Paul, in 2016, when John Gilmore was cashing big checks off the taxpayers, Asa Hutchinson was going out there and telling people, if we take people off Medicaid, we're going to save money. We're going to have if Brian King, if we reduce people off the Obamacare expansion, it's going to hurt the budget. And now he's flip-flopped and said the same thing. So I sent John Gilmore and Jamie Barker a question on Twitter. Say, since Asa Hutchinson is saving all this money, why? I asked him, who is the all-time record biggest spending governor for the time they're in office? Who is the all-time biggest record spender? Let's see when they come up with an answer. They're on Twitter. The second thing, who is the all-time biggest spender of Medicaid? Now, Asa Hutchinson is going out there and trying to tell people he's saving money, folks, cutting costs. That's what he's saying. So I just posed those questions. Let's just see how long it takes them to answer with the answer. And I gave them a hint. I tried to help them out. They know it.
Well, I mean.
So anyway, but on the tax farce, everything. What I said in the paper originally was, you know what, before you hire consultants, which sometimes needs to happen, folks, it sometimes needs you to, exhaust all resources first. I've been down there and experienced. You know what, Jim Hendren doesn't listen. He's always on Twitter sitting there saying, oh, I'm so tired of these people criticizing, and don't come up with solutions. Well, first off, Jim, that's part of the job. I've never once complained about that in 12 years that people complain to me. Okay, so Jim does this. He don't want to listen. And what Jim Hendren sits there and says, I said exhaust all resources first. Use what resources before you stick it to the taxpayers. Jim Hendren doesn't do that. He's tried to stick to taxpayers for $300,000 more money. Okay? Didn't listen, doesn't want to listen, just messes up, screws up. And then in the paper, literally, he's talking his head off trying to spin his way out of it. Well, we got some good information, but they were wrong on some other stuff. What I said in Twitter last night, and I haven't heard anything from Jim, is Jim was a mechanic out there, and he was fixing your tires. What Jim is saying is, folks, you drive off the lot, and on your 4 tires, 2 of them fall off. You've paid him $100,000 to get it right. And he's saying, well, hey, you know what? 2 of the tires stayed on. So, I mean, it just, folks, it's a regular thing. If you're driving down the road and you're going to work, and 2 of your tires fall off, and Jim Hendren put on all 4 of them, he's going to sit there and tell you, well, 2 of them stayed on. So, once again, it's just how they waste money down there foolishly, and then they go and lie and spin it. Like, they did in 2016, and now they're trying to do now.
And I think all this really does is expose, that the task force way of governing is just not responsible in turn. I mean, I think
misleading to see.
Yeah,
that's what it is.
Our constitutional legislative branch, the entire body should be debating and making these decisions, not having them trying to be the rudder to give people this choice architecture. And that, meaning, well, here are our choices, and all these choices are acceptable to us.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Paul Harrell. In launching the program, Conduit News Radio, and with the new time slot and everything else this week, it certainly has been a schedule shift. But leading up to all of this, one of the things that I got to do was, monkey around with some music, trying to, get a new show intro. And I'm obviously pretty fond of President Ronald Reagan and the quotes that you hear there. But we kind of added a new one there, the beginning, where he says they seem to be in full retreat of spending cuts and are now talking about raising people's taxes. And the reason I put that in is because that exactly sums up what I believe, where I believe the state of Arkansas, our local Arkansas politicians are heading. I hope that's not the case, but then again, you just kind of look at the concept of, just look at what's being advocated for. Yesterday, we told you about the $172 million spending increase proposed by Governor Asa Hutchinson, and if you combine that with the other years he's been here and the increase in spending, again, 130, 140, 160 million, now another 170, which would have been $270 million had he not tried to, use some carefully crafted language, or he did use carefully crafted language in an attempt to get people to think that he was actually cutting when, in fact, we're still increasing the size and scope of government here in the state of Arkansas. And so I think that really, and what Ronald Reagan was saying in that quote, by the way, is that, he's going to veto any tax increase that comes across his desk. Wouldn't that be great if we had that kind of strong leadership from the executive branch? And, what we really have got to have at this point is it is time for the Arkansas General Assembly to just to quit only being loyal to the Republican Party or the most powerful Republican in the state, or you know what I mean? Like, we've got to get away from this concept of party first. Okay, the party should be an avenue to actually accomplish what the principles you campaign on are, and in order to do that, right now we have people at the top, the establishment, the people who are in control of the leadership of the Republican Party down at the Marble Palace. They are in full status quo protection mode, and now they're shifting to re-election mode because Governor Asa Hutchinson does have a primary opponent in Jan Morgan. Anyway, good morning to everybody out there. Glad that you're with us. Going to introduce some of you to what we do weekly on the program. So here goes. All right, it's time for the Conduit for Action weekly game show. It's really just a quiz, but we like to play a little game show here. We have our board operator, Joe, that takes this weekly quiz on Arkansas issues. Knowledge is power. So this week it's on the Arkansas sales tax on groceries, a story we covered Monday because the Arkansas General Assembly is thinking about raising your taxes specifically the grocery tax. So let's get started, shall we? Okay, so Conduit for Action posted an article this week on the grocery tax. The tax task force considered raising it in its preliminary report that was out at the end of December 2017. This particular quiz will highlight the history of the grocery tax, its current rate, the future rate. Also a question, it'll question highlighting the recent tax increase on soda and candy that was slipped into a tax cut bill benefiting military retirees. Of course, we now know that wasn't really a net tax cut because the government actually gets more revenue from it in the long run. So that's certainly pretty frustrating.
My first question before we even start getting into this is why would the Arkansas state government attempt to lower the grocery tax over so long or such a period of time and then want to raise it again?
That's a good question.
Like, 'cause a few years ago, didn't they try to start lowering it? Like, slowly but surely, just lower it.
I believe so. I believe so. I don't know. I don't know why they would want to. You know, a lot of people. The idea of taxing your food is just
absurd. Yeah,
it's absurd to a lot of people. But it is the government, and they think they have a right to everything we do consume. I mean, the government exists at our expense, the people's expense, but people in government tend to think it's the opposite. And that in and of itself is offensive to any liberty-minded people. So, Joe, real quick, if you hear... So we're going to be going through this. So this sound will mean that you're out of time. Okay? And then later, after we review them, if you get a correct answer, this is what it'll sound like. Okay? Got that going for us. Hope you like that. But if you get a wrong answer... we're going to shame you publicly, like we always do.
That's okay. I appreciate the haters.
Okay. So, question number 1, and this is up on your screen if you're watching us over at facebook.com/Conduit News. Question number 1, what is the current state sales tax rate on groceries in Arkansas? Okay, is it A, 3%? Is it B, 2.5%, C, 2%, or is it D, 1.5%? Think it out now.
Yeah, I think it's 3%. Pretty sure it's 3% because a couple of years ago it was 4.5%, and they've been trying to lower it steadily.
So here's the thing.
I think it's 3%.
If you're wrong, it's a good thing because it's a learning experience for everyone out there. This is designed to educate folks. You guys can go take the quiz yourself if you want. So you're saying you're going with A, 3%.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, get that music out of there. All right, here we go. Question number 2. Which governor supported and signed into law a reduction in the state sales tax on groceries? Okay? Which governor was it? Was it A, Governor Mike Huckabee, B, Governor Mike Beebe, C, Governor Asa Hutchinson, or D, Governor Jan Morgan?
Well,
gosh, I like the sound of that.
It's definitely not D.
But I like the sound of that. Like Mayor Goldie Wilson. I like the sound of that. All right, here we go.
It's got a ring to it.
All right, what is
Jan
it?
Morgan.
Was
Governor
it Huckabee, Beebe, or Hutchinson? What do you think?
I don't think it's Huckabee. It's too long ago.
I give you no help on these. I give Joe no help on these, folks.
Something tells me it's BB because I don't know if Asa would allow it to go across his desk.
Okay. All right, so you're going with that. Okay, well, that's good because this sound means that you're out of time. We got to remember that. You're doing good. So you're going with Mike Beebe. All right. Question 3. Okay. Hang on one second. Got to get that out of there. Question number 3. What will the state sales tax on groceries reduce down to beginning in 2019? Okay, so it's at a certain rate now. What's it going to lower down to? Is it A, 0.125%, B, 1%, C, 0.75%, or D, 0.5%? Think it out now.
Well, now having this question, I think my first question my answer to my first question would be different, but I'm not going to go back and change it.
Well, I mean, see, I don't. If you want to go back and change, I'm not going to be opposed to it.
Okay.
Because it's. I mean, that's what you would do, like on a test for a teacher, or in a school situation.
Yeah. So I'm going to go with 1%. I don't think it's going to lower 2% over a year.
Okay.
So I'm going to go back up here and change it to 1.5%.
Okay.
Actually.
So you're saying.
No, I'm going to change it to 2%. 2%.
Okay. So you're saying going all the way back to question 1.
Yeah.
The current state sales tax on groceries, you're saying is 2%.
Yeah, because
that's your guess.
Because it's going to lower. Because right now, as things stand, I'm going to go with 2%, which would have been 2017. 2018, it's going to get lowered another 0.5% to 1.5.
Okay. And
then get lowered in 2019 to 1.
Okay, so you're at least making a logical path for it. Okay, that's good. That's good. First of all, folks, you can go to Conduit for Action and share this quiz, take this quiz. This is designed, knowledge is power. This is designed to get everybody on the same page, all right? We're going to go over the answers in just a moment. So question, what are we on, 4? All right, question number 4. What was the state sales tax rate on soda and candy raised to under Act 141 of 2017, the Military Retirees Income Tax Exemption Law? So what was it raised to? A, 0%, B, 1.5%, C, 6.5%, or D, 7.5%. So you can just relax it out. What do you think, Joe?
Soda and candy had a carve-out, which means they didn't pay anything before. So which means there was really no sales tax rate on it. So... I feel like 6.5 is too high just to throw at them.
What do you think?
I'm going to go with 6.5.
Good. Going with 6.5, that's good because you're almost out of time there. And question number 5. Here we go. Ready? Is there a local sales tax on groceries? A, yes. Although the state sales tax on groceries is reduced, cities and counties may and do still tax groceries at local sales tax rates. Or B, no.
Something tells me there is.
Okay. All right. Going with yes. And question number 6. Have you subscribed to Conduit for Action's email list to get news surveys and articles automatically sent to your inbox? Your answer is yes, you already have, Joe. And then the last one, in what town do you live? Fill that out. All right. So let's see what we got here. Submit your answers.
80%. I missed one. I missed one.
Nice.
Gotta be. I'm on the backswing.
Yeah.
Well,
80%. So you got 4 out of 5 correct.
Well, one of them isn't scored. Number 1 wasn't scored.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's a little error there.
Do you know what it is, Paul? The answer number 1 was?
Governor supported and signed into law reduction in the state sales tax rate on groceries.
Oh, no,
that was Mike Beebe.
That was number 2. Number 1, the one that's not on here.
Oh, we don't. Okay.
The current tax rate for groceries.
Yeah. What is the current state sales tax rate on groceries? Let's see. 1.5 state grocery rate before being raised to the state standard. Okay. Yeah. So it's 1.5%.
Okay. So I got that one wrong.
Okay. So I
put 2%.
Yeah. 1.5%. All right. So, that's question number 1. So you put 2%. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I put 2%.
Okay, so that means that you're shamed.
Yes,
publicly
shamed. But I put 2%.
Those boos are for you, Joe.
Yeah.
All right. So question number 2.
Wow.
You got that one correct.
Yeah.
We mentioned that, Mike Beebe. Question number 3.
This is the one that made me go back and change my answer to number 1, which I would have got wrong either way if I hadn't. If I hadn't gone
so what was the question? What will
1.25%?
What will the state sales tax on groceries reduce down to beginning in 2019?
Dang, that's so small comparatively.
Yeah. It'll go down to 0.125%.
All right, Mike Beebe. Good.
Yeah.
That was a good
But
law.
see what they're talking about. They're talking about raising your taxes on groceries as Republicans.
Not a surprise because it's ASA.
Republicans are pitching that. And now maybe that was a Randy Bauer thing. Maybe that was a Senator Jim Hendren, Randy Bauer, duo.
Hopeful idea.
Where the lifelong Democrat is recommending, this kind of ridiculous policy. Maybe that's all it was.
Recommends no tax cuts.
Yeah. Number 4, you got correct. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You got some good answers. So this just goes for all of your correct answers.
I've already been publicly booed.
We'll boo you. We'll boo you individually, but we will
celebrate me once.
Yeah, just generally celebrate you.
Yeah.
So that's good. And what else do we have?
I need one more boo.
Oh, you do?
Yeah. For number 3.
For number 3. Okay. Well, you know what? You're being given a pardon on that.
Okay.
Question 4.
Because I outed myself.
Question 4, what was the state sales tax rate on soda and candy raised to? You got that right, 6.5%.
I'm glad I went with my gut on that one.
Yep. And here we go. Is there a local sales tax rate of groceries? You got that correct as well, yes. Anyway, this is all up, and you can subscribe to the newsletter. This is all up at conduit4action.org, and it comes out every week, and we'll be doing this every week. And sometimes, I mean, you can go back and take previous quizzes as well. Really good stuff. It gets you educated about what maybe a lot of us don't know about the local government that surrounds us. A lot of us are numb to our tax rates and things like that. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure that life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, a little bit more on the grocery tax. Good morning to you. Welcome back to the show. So here's the thing. Dan on our Facebook page is writing that it's basically pointing out the strangeness that the Democrats reduced the grocery tax and rhinos are now talking about raising it, and just how strange that is. You know, it really is strange. And the other thing we missed in that quiz we were just talking about, I failed to tell you that. So you have that 1.5% grocery tax, right? And candy and soda was raised to the full 6.5%. Now that was done to give military retirees a tax cut as well as a tax increase on. So they increased taxes there. They increased taxes on digital downloads. They gave a tax cut to the syrup industry. It was all really weird and convoluted, and they slipped it in, right? They slipped these tax increases in, and they used the honor and integrity and respect that most people have, or we all have, for our veterans in order to do it. And that is just, wow, you'd think that would be something the Democrats would do if we're honest. I mean, right? But that's what your Republican leadership did, and they put the Republican leadership put a lot of conservatives in very difficult positions. And that was the first thing they did right out of the gate last year. And it really set the tone for the entire session. It served to make sure the troops were going to fall in line or else, or we'll put you in similar situations again. And that's just not how you would think anybody in the same party would treat others, you know, who are affiliated with them. Folks, we have a really good rest of the show for you. Coming up in the next segment, we're going to be talking with State Representative Jeff Williams. What district is he from? What does that say up there? 89, District 89. And then at the top of the next hour, 7:05, we'll be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan, who's from District 53 up in Northeast Arkansas. And then at the bottom of the next hour, so about an hour from now, we'll be talking with State Representative Josh Miller from District 66. That's around Heber Springs. That area there, who's always a pleasure to talk to. So we're going to talk, I'm sure we're going to talk budget. We're going to talk tax policy throughout the rest of the program. And at some point I need to give you a little bit of a John Woods public corruption trial update, because that's been in the paper the last 2 days, going into some closed hearings yesterday. Of course, this has to do with money laundering, kickback schemes. You had former State Representative Mike and Neal last year pleading guilty to taking $38,000 of taxpayer money kickbacks. You've got this really weird laundering scheme where they use consultants and universities to, retain the consultant, promising the access to the politicians' general improvement funds. Also last year, the general improvement fund was found to be unconstitutional for like the bajillionth time. We'll see if the General Assembly makes new laws getting around the Arkansas Supreme Court rulings once again. Anyway, we got a lot of stuff to get to, so stay tuned. This is Conduit News Radio. My name is Paul Harrell. You can watch us live at facebook.com/Conduit News. Everybody keep the hands at 10 and 2. I'll be right back. Because we're this select group of legislators that are, debating these things, and that's what these task forces really end up doing. And I, so I think this exposes that as being flawed, considering the fact that a Republican majority state hired a lifelong Democrat to head all this stuff up.
Yeah, I mean, Obama-loving Democrat, absolutely. And maybe, and the thing about this with Jim Hendren is he doesn't listen. Just like on the campus carry, enhanced carry, whatever debacle, Jim said, I pulled Jim back there. I said, Jim, you know what, you're going to get what you want. I said, let's just try and work and debate it in committees. Let's try and work it out, see what we could do. And I told him, I said, I may wind up voting for it. He refused. They refused. And then that's why you got embarrassment of guns and SEC football games. That should have never happened if you're running legislation correctly. And we're talking about gun legislation and how foolish and carelessly. But on the consultant part, again, this is all misleading to see. Folks, they've got to get in your they have misbudgeted so badly down there and prioritize Medicaid over everything else. That's why we have a crime crisis. Two things Asa Hutchinson never said yesterday. He never addressed the crime crisis. Oh, he came up with some little bitty things. Folks, it's not even going to be close to making our streets safe again. Okay? And the second thing is he didn't address highways. When you're driving to work today, guess what? Asa Hutchinson has no solution for highways. And he continues to spend more in Medicaid. Finally, a Democrat Gazette headline.
Yes.
Telling the truth. Asa Hutchinson spending more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so now that makes it his first year he increased spending $130 million, his second year $140, his third $160, and now for his fourth
election year
$170 million. And then they had the audacity to try to manipulate the voters, and his office is claiming he's cutting $100 million when
cutting, yes,
which is a complete deception. It's just he's cutting.
Lying.
Yeah, it's just a new projection. Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, that's people don't like to use that word, but that's exactly what's going on here.
That's exactly what's going on here, and the thing about it is with Asa Hutchinson in this bunch, they don't want somebody telling the truth. They're going to try and undercut you, do every type of dirty politics, and it's just sad what's going on. And repeatedly in 2016, I was in the newspapers. I knew the facts of the budget, and I tried to meet with Governor Hutchinson. You know, I would say, oh, Brian King's mean and everything. I would try to be nice. I was in the newspapers. I sent text messages to staff people. John, it's all there, buddy.
Mm-hmm.
John Gilmore, Asa Hutchinson, you little minions, if you're out there listening, it's...
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us today. My name is Paul Harrell. This is Conduit News Radio. And welcome back to the program. We've got on the phone line State Representative Jeff Williams is with us from District 89. Jeff, welcome to the program, and tell us real quick, District 89, what area of the state we're talking about?
You're talking about the downtown Springdale area as well as some of the surrounding neighborhoods. I take up my district encompasses most of Springdale, but a little bit of Springdale is taken up by a few of the other representatives.
All right. So are you down in Little Rock at this moment?
I am.
Okay. So you have been around for the, I guess, the budget hearings this week then. How have those been going?
It's the process that we go through in the budget hearings is both enlightening and sometimes a little frustrating. What I mean by that is that it gives you an opportunity to be able to address the leadership of the Big Six, the folks that spend the most of our people's tax money in operating their different agencies. But it's a little frustrating too, and so those who follow me on Twitter and others understand that frustration because I've been expressing it during this last couple of days. I believe there needs to be major changes done to the tax review process in the aspect that the way that it currently runs, the agencies come in with their requests, the executive provides their recommendation, and then there's also a review of the what essentially will become the Revenue Stabilization Act, RSA, that the legislature puts out. And the agencies will get up there and defend their agency requests, but the reality of it is that their agency requests are so far above the RSA numbers that it's nothing more than a pipe dream of the agencies and what they would desire if we had an unlimited amount of revenue coming in. And it's a process that we're defending and discussing budgets that will never exist. And I think the change needs to occur so that they're in there defending and showing us exactly where they're going to spend the taxpayers' money based upon a more realistic picture, which encompasses the RSA limitations as well as any special revenues that come into their agencies, and give them a little bit of flexibility, a 5% flexibility or something, because as we all know within our businesses, the executives need a little bit of a cushion to be able to move around assets based upon unforeseen conditions that are going to occur in the future. But nonetheless, as I said, it's an opportunity and a frustration at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, what you just said, that's interesting. This is my gut reaction. If they're asking for, pie in the sky type budgets, it seems like a waste of time. I mean, wouldn't it be better if these agencies were coming defending how much money they got last year and saying, we still need at least this much, and maybe, the whole debate has changed to where the legislature might be a little skeptical. Like, did you really accomplish what you were set out to accomplish with the money we gave you last time? Defend getting at least that same amount this time.
Yeah, it is. And I can tell you that I have the highlight, at least for me, during this budget review process has been the fact that in the past sessions, you've seen some of these agencies come in and provide a review of their budget, talking about last year's numbers and talking about what they need in their coming year. And there hasn't been a tremendous amount of discussion by a large number of the members in sometimes in past years. This year, that's not the case. They have been getting, many of those agencies have been getting grilled by a large number of the members.
Good.
This one, I can think of half a dozen members that have been really calling them to task on some of their requests, and that hasn't been the case necessarily in the past. And it's good to see.
Good. Now that is refreshing. I know we've got a lot of people down there that really do want to see, a smaller government and see that, reflected in our state agencies. Because if you look at, the amount of money we're spending to support these state agencies and government in general compared to the rest of the states around us, Arkansas just really is vastly more expensive to run our government than the other states around us. Last question on the budget, and then I do want to move on to tax policy and your great thoughts on that. We're talking with State Representative Jeff Williams. Can you tell us a little bit about the news that we got yesterday that the proposed budget is a $172 million increase?
Yes. Yeah. It's, when you start talking about budgeting numbers, sometimes people can get lost in in all of the large numbers. I mean, down state government, we're talking about a, $5.6 billion or so, give or take a few $100 million in revenue that comes out of our the main revenue sources we get at the state level. It's various sources, but it comes from our state. But then there's an additional about $18 billion that comes in from other sources, generally the federal government. Down when we start dealing with our budget down here, we're only talking about the state resources, because the reality of it is that's all that we at this level can control in our legislature. So we're only talking about that $5.6 billion and dealing with that. But
let me ask you this: Can you? I mean, I'm pretty upset by it. The increase. I think there's a lot of people who are conservatives who are like, man, why are we growing the size of government $172 million? And this is on top of the increases in spending in years previous. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, no, and it's no question. I mean, if you're spending more money, you may be, and we have reduced the number of people who work for our state government. That's been reduced, but the spending levels have gone up, and obviously, as a if you want to call it they use the term everybody uses this, small government conservative. Whenever you're seeing the reality of it is that the fuel for larger government is revenue. And so when you see more money being spent, then there's no question that you're growing the government in the aspect of the revenue that is being spent. And people get lost in the numbers. It was great to see a reduction in the request from the Department of Human Services of $477 million out of a $9.9 billion budget that they've got. It's great to see that request, but it is still a larger request than we have than most people would necessarily like to see coming out of that department.
Yes.
And so you see that, like I said, when you see that $477 million reduction, but then some people question, okay, well, we saw a $477 million reduction, but we're also seeing an additional $170 million increase to the state's part of that money. So it's easy to get lost in the numbers, but the reality for me at least is how much of the taxpayers' money are we taking? Is it more or less?
Mm-hmm. That's exactly right.
In the end.
Well, so let's talk about that. I think it's hard. Building on that, okay, we're talking again with State Representative Jeff Williams. He's calling in from Little Rock. He's been down the budget process, the budget hearings all week. If we continue to increase spending, and which unfortunately we have, the last 3 years, and this will be the fourth year, it makes it harder to get real tax reform, because we really need to save that money so that we can give it back to the people. And I know that you attend the task force meetings. You're not a member, but you are a member of this newly formed committee that kind of is supposed to work kind of in tandem with the task force, the Tax and Economic Policy Committee. So what can you tell us about some of the ideas that you've heard, and where do you think we need to go when it comes to tax policy moving forward?
Right, and I can tell you, I have attended each of the meetings of the task force. When I was asked to serve on the Economy and Tax Policy Joint Committee, I was actually happier that I was asked to serve on that, because that committee has more ability to look at the bigger picture than the task force that's going on. They are limited on what they're looking at, where we in the Joint Committee can look at everything that impacts taxes and our economy, and I've used that position to try to bring more into the discussion on it. I can tell you that everybody's aware of all of the changes that have recently occurred with the firing of or letting go, however you want to term it.
Fired. You're fired. You're fired.
Of the tax consultants firm there. That change has been made. I was extremely happy with that change. I was not happy with some of the data and information and processes that were going on with the consultants. I was happy to see that change occur in there. I believe that we have enough people within our agencies up here, as well as members on the task force, that we can accomplish it in a more economically beneficial manner to our taxpayers. And also, by doing it this way, you're going to be making their elected representatives more directly responsible to those taxpayers, to the people who put them in office, by having them have to stand up and take the brunt of the blame if it comes right down to it, or the accolades if they do a great job. And I believe they earn both. So I like that move that occurred. But there's a lot of work that needs to be done now. We've looked at a lot of the history and where we're at, and now is the time to step up and start making some decisions and start making a move forward Arkansas in a better position in its tax policies and therefore its business climate and so many other things.
So I guess my question is, what do you have any concerns about, possibly us not reducing spending? Do you have any concerns about the ideas only being focused around revenue neutral tax cuts? That's what they would call them, where we make sure the government gets the same amount of money, but we're going to shift taxes. And what can a lot of times can happen when even that occurs is the government winds up with more money than they did before. I mean, are you concerned that that's an obstacle that conservatives have got to overcome to get sound conservative tax policy?
There's no question about it. I mean, there has to be we have to look at spending because with Arkansas having the Revenue Stabilization Act, which I'm not a fan of. I mean, you and I have talked about this before.
Yes.
I believe the Revenue Stabilization Act ends up causing you to spend every dime that comes in, which leaves no room for paying for tax I hate using the term paying for tax reductions, but for allowing tax reductions to occur without impacting revenue. There's all sorts of things that comes with the RSA that I'm not a fan of. But primarily, you have to be able to you have to look at your spending. I mean, you can't get meaningful tax reform without addressing spending. Arkansas has realized is realizing on average over $150 million in additional revenue just off of economic growth on an annual basis for a number of years. That's a rounded off number, but about $150 million. But you've come to realize that, say, reducing the individual and corporate tax rates down to the 5% level I've heard so many people talk about, you're talking about getting close to somewhere between $800 million to $1 billion in that's if you want to call it the cost of doing that's going to be the reduction in the revenue that will occur. Well, you can realize that by simplifying economic growth, but that's going to take you 7 years to do that. So how else do you do that? Well, there's two other means: reducing spending in that and controlling it into the future. That's another important aspect. I can reduce spending this year, but if I continue to increase in the coming years, it doesn't really have an impact. But reducing current spending and controlling future spending, and the other one is, of course, looking at the base and exemptions that occur, because right now tax exemptions in Arkansas are costing, or their valuation right now is somewhere between about $1.6 and $2 billion. And I am perfectly fine with certain tax exemptions that exist, but there are others out there that are simply benefits to a few individuals who happen to have a lot of friends in the legislature in the past and are hurting the average citizen.
State Representative Jeff Williams, I so appreciate you coming on the program, and I appreciate your ideas, and I know you're working towards shrinking the size of government, and one of the ways you mentioned is to you alluded to sending the government less money means shrinking government, and so I just I appreciate your work because I know you're really trying to keep an eye on this. We had somebody on Facebook that asked how to follow you on Twitter, so I went ahead. I just want to make sure your handle is @Williams4AR on Twitter. Is that correct?
That is, and then I have an old one as well. It's Jeff, and I think the one I'm putting more on these days is Jeff 4, the number 4, District 89.
Okay, at Jeff, the number 4, District 89. Okay, I'll update that as well. I appreciate it very much, State Representative Jeff Williams. Keep up the good work, and good luck down there in Little Rock.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate it.
All righty. Good morning to you. Folks, we got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a moment.
If you would like information about advertising or supporting the Paul Harrell program and Conduit Media Group, call 870-275-9755. Join the fight against big government and advance the preservation of liberty by calling 870-275-9755. The Paul Harrell program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Who's next to zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zipline. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I've got this... I'm looking at a tweet right now from Governor Asa Hutchinson writing in 2017. Of course, he's nervous. He's trying to pivot to the right. At the lead, I mean, you know, the best case, he straddles the fence in the middle, but there's a strong case to be made that Governor Hutchinson is actually on the left side of the political spectrum, just as a Republican. You know, the way he goes on MSNBC and CNN, and he was arguing against Donald Trump's plan to repeal Obamacare. I mean, remember all this. This is interesting stuff. But I'm looking at a tweet, and he said, in 2017, we cut taxes, created jobs, improved education, and more. With your support, I look forward to seeing what else we can accomplish in the coming years. You know, it's interesting. I take exception to the concept that he believes that he creates jobs. Now, he says we, but, you know, he's talking about his administration. We created jobs.
The jobs, Governor.
You know, and if you will go back and listen to Ronald Reagan's 1989 farewell address, he didn't take credit directly for the 20 million jobs, a booming economy. You go back and listen to it, he says, the American people created the jobs. And that's always struck me as just a commitment to principle for him was, from the entire 8 years of his presidency. And Ronald Reagan wasn't perfect, obviously, but I love that speech. It's one of his best, and it just really it's about philosophy. It's just about do you really think the government creates jobs? Asa Hutchinson does, because he gives a bunch of existing Arkansas business owners taxpayer dollars to Chinese companies in an attempt for them to hopefully come here and create some jobs at some point. That's what he believes. Now, in reality, the bold move would be to eliminate the corporate income tax here in Arkansas, and quit giving all of these incentives to companies to move here and treat all corporations the same, or all businesses the same. That, I think, would be the conservative thing to do. So, general improvement funds. Here we go. Hey, by the way, coming up here the next hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan as well as State Representative Josh Miller. So, stay tuned for that. But general improvement funds. And I'm going to talk to some of you, assuming that you haven't heard some of this. But for a long time, this money that legislators have access to came under heavy criticism from me for years, because it's essentially a re-election tool. They take taxpayer money, they give it to organizations or whoever they want to give it to back in their communities to retain power. To buy votes. You say what you want to, but if the local fire department or a rural fire department somewhere is getting money from state representative whoever, the people at that fire department are going to vote for him again. Period. 100% going to vote for him again. And that's what this money's used for. There are example after example of these general improvement funds, during primaries, maybe a Republican primary or a Democrat primary. 2 weeks before early voting starts, all of a sudden the incumbent is on the front page of the local paper, basically handing out the equivalent of a publisher's clearinghouse check to the Boys and Girls Club or something. You know what I'm saying? The whole thing, that's always been a huge criticism about what this program was. Last year it was found unconstitutional in the wake of something a lot worse, which was former State Representative Micah Neal saying they used the money and funneled it through different avenues so that they could take kickbacks for the money that they had access to. He pled guilty. Senator John Woods has now been indicted. Senator John Woods was known for a long time down at the Marble Palace as a guy who, carves out his own little financial niche, and he did it with the deceptive language. Look, he's being accused of money laundering here, of wire fraud, okay? But if you really kind of dive into what John Woods has done legislatively, you come up with a lot of questions, a lot more questions about, was everything done legislatively to accomplish other goals? I mean, these are the questions, other things that are not really readily seen to people. And keep in mind, the reason that the term limits of legislators increased deceptively, their pay increased in a deceptive way, was because of a ballot initiative that John Woods put through. The language was written so deceptively, people thought they were voting for term limits when in reality they were voting to increase almost, double the amount of time people can stay down there. Anyway, we got one more hour coming your way next. I ran out of time here.
1013 FM News Talk, KBTM Jonesboro. Loud and crystal clear for Northeast Arkansas with news and talk.
All there. And you know what? I tried repeatedly, out of the goodness in trying to work together and say, Governor, no, the facts are we are not saving money in traditional Medicaid. We are spending far more than ever. And then yesterday, Paul, I'm going to post the video up. Duncan Baird couldn't answer the questions. He just got a $19,000 raise. He makes over, you guys going to work out there, guess what? Do you get to go into your work and sit there and can't answer questions? No, that's for somebody else. The budget director for Governor Asa Hutchinson, who was there and supported Obamacare expansion, right there with his buddy John Burris, making over probably salaries and benefits, I'm going to give a range of $120,000 to $150,000 a year on video, folks, saying, I can't answer that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A budget director, when he's with budget questions, paid somewhere between $120,000 to $150,000 of your tax dollars, could not answer the question.
And the question was simple. The Hutchinson administration used to say that reducing Medicaid rolls would put a hole in the budget. Now he says it saves us money. You never got a straight answer. Now, I'm told that in the afternoon...
Never got any answer.
Right. You never got any answer, and he didn't have the numbers as to why all of a sudden there's a big flip-flop. I'm told in the afternoon, Senator Hickey asked a similar question and got Cindy Gillespie to actually admit that reducing Medicaid rolls will save the state money, which is like, oh, wow, why are they finally admitting that?
Cindy Gillespie, that's great news, folks. Cindy Gillespie in 2016 came on and backed Governor Hutchinson up. That's news right there, folks.
And so now she's saying it will save us money, so that should open the door to say, okay, well, if we got rid of the program, how much money would we save? I mean, it's for able-to-work adults. How much of this theater that Ace is trying to act like he's...
Theater lying. Let's say he's not lying. I'm saying lying.
Well, isn't that what actors are? So how much of this theater that's going on really has to do with Jan Morgan in the primary coming up in May?
It has everything to do with saving and sitting there and trying to say everything. Let me tell you, Asa Hutchinson is a bad lawyer. He's trying to flip-flop and say, he's defending something that he did, is guilty of in the newspapers, irrefutable evidence out there. And he somehow got election year, and he's going, I got to say something different. I didn't do, I didn't commit those things back in 2016. He doesn't even want to have to answer it or go through it. And fortunately, I got a few minutes before they try and cut me off. But Duncan Baird just proved everything. And if Cindy Gillespie is on video of saying that, she's also on video of backing Governor Asa Hutchinson, another big paid bureaucrat. So, they have some, they're caught.
Yeah, they're changing the narrative, trying to change. They're not really trying to change direction. They're just trying to change, the carefully crafted language and how they word it. I got a text message, somebody ask Brian, what would happen to Arkansas's budget if the federal government raised the portion of our contribution for the expanded Medicaid population?
They're already going to raise the portion in each year that we're doing. Let me tell you something, folks. I already know the answer right now. It would devastate. And you take in 2020, which Congress may change up there, folks. We had, a window of opportunity in 2015 to start reversing that. Asa Hutchinson didn't listen. He refused to meet with me. John Gilmore, if you're listening, you were cashing big checks off the taxpayers. Help Jamie, who was new. I'll say Jamie's new. Jamie seems like a nice guy, and he's in this. So, guys, answer the questions on Twitter. Let's just get the folks out there. John, you were cashing big checks with the governor at the time, okay? Duncan Baird has cashed big checks off the taxpayers since he's been down there since 2009, okay? He was joint budget chairman during this time when him and John Burris were holding hands and raising up and celebrating the fact that we were going to save all this money in traditional Medicaid.
And it's all the facts bear out. Everything that they said this program was, is the opposite. I mean, it's everything we said it was. It's a big government disaster.
But who's bet? Duncan Baird. I hope he's listening. His little best buddy is cashing big checks too out of all that legislation. So, friends of legislation.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, morning, morning. Thanks so much for being with us. This is hour number 2. You can sound off on the program, by the way. You can call us or text us. The number 870-275-9799. You can watch us live or up at facebook.com/Conduit News. Please welcome back to the program, calling in from Little Rock. We've got State Representative Dan Sullivan on the line. He represents District 53. That's a portion of northeast Arkansas. Dan, welcome, sir.
Hey, Paul. How are you this morning?
I'm doing good. I'm doing very well this morning. So you're down in we were just talking to your friend, your colleagues, State Representative Jeff Williams. He was on last hour. Had a good discussion with him about the budget process. Have you been down there for these budgetary hearings as well?
Yes, and I do listen to Jeff personally, too, not just on the radio, but he's a wise representative. He has a good grasp of what's going on, especially in these budget and tax issues, and really glad to hear his position on these.
Yeah. So a ton of stuff has happened this week. We have, and the task force, they let go or fired the consultant. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I'd also love to get your thoughts on the headlines yesterday. The proposed budget is a $172 million increase, a growth in government. What are your thoughts on all this, Dan Sullivan?
Well, first of all, I think we've got a great group called ACRE. You've had those folks on your program several times, the Arkansas Center for Research in
Economics.
Economics. Thank you. And those are some smart folks. They have a book out, a small pamphlet, Arkansas, the Roadmap to Tax Reform. I've read that the last few days again, and they just have a great roadmap as they describe it, and I sure hope our folks will take a look at some of our local experts, because we do have them. They're very familiar with our local economies and our state economy, and take some consultation from them. As far as what's going on the other, of course, on the healthcare side, I've heard, Brian King, Senator King's position. I agree with what they're talking about. The one big issue I think that we really don't mention, the executive department hopes they get these waivers approved, and we're hanging our hat on the fact that these reductions in numbers are going well, and we want to hope to continue to reduce those. And once we get the waivers, well, there's a strong chance the Trump administration not only will grant the waivers, but there's a very strong chance they will increase Arkansas's portion. For a while Arkansas paid zero on for health care. And that was one of the primary reasons we passed all of that. Arkansas Works was to get that 100% Fed payment. And Senator King asked, what's the difference? Well, here's the difference. The difference is when the feds paid 100%, we made a lot of money. Now that we're paying 5%, we're trying to purge those rolls. That's the difference. Clearly, I think there's not many want to say that publicly, but that's where all the money's involved right there. And it's in Arkansas's, for a while, it was in Arkansas's best interest to have a lot of people on the roll. Feds were paying it, more money came in.
Because of that premium tax, because the state government
also,
taxes the insurance premium, so they get a portion of it. So the incentive was just way out of whack. I mean, the incentive was for us to just spend.
Exactly, and now that's the thing that's changed. So Paul, I think anytime any of your listeners went out to buy a large product, if you went out to buy an automobile and the dealer showed you an automobile that had all the luxuries on it, all the accessories, and said, well, and here's the price, you'd say, well, show me something else. And you would walk away from a dealership that said, no, this is it. want to see anything else. This is it. And you would say, no, show me something else. Well, I think during those hearings, I heard a couple of senators and a couple of people say, well, what would Arkansas's budget look like without Arkansas work? You know, I think the administration it's incumbent upon them to show the taxpayers and show the legislators what a budget would look like without Arkansas work. And let us have that debate and do a little bit of comparative shopping.
So
let us know what that looks like.
Do you anticipate getting those numbers? Because, I mean, it was interesting because, you know, Brian King raised an interesting point. You know, they used to say, you know, getting rid of Arkansas Works would cost us money, would put a hole in the budget. Now they're saying reducing the rolls. You had Cindy Gillespie admit that it's better financially if the rolls are smaller, which makes perfect sense. It should have always made sense. And so do you think we'll actually get to look at how much money we would save by getting rid of the program?
Well, we were told we would. And I think it's incumbent upon the administration to provide that number. And of course, the difference is, and there is a difference, the difference is previously the feds paid everything. Arkansas had no skin in the game. Now Arkansas has skin in the game at 5%. And it is to our benefit to reduce those rolls. But the voters need to remember that, you know, the Trump administration could easily come back and say, you know, we're going to grant all these waivers, which will help you actualize decreasing the numbers, but we're also going to raise that from 5% to 6% or 7% or 20%, which will put a huge hole in our budget. That's my biggest fear right there as a legislator, is going forward with Arkansas Works without having any comparative data. What does it look like if we go to 6%, 8%? What does it look like if we get out completely?
Well,
I think that's important.
I really, What comes to mind is Lieutenant Governor Tim Griffin, back when he was in D.C., you know, a congressman, he said about this whole experiment with Medicaid expansion that from a federal standpoint, there is no dedicated funding stream. So the first chance that they get, they're going to start to mess with these, you know, this 90-10 match rate, you know, maybe more like 70-30 eventually, which is what traditional Medicaid is. And, of course, now we have the funding for the entire Obamacare system as a whole. It's just been, you know, had the leg swept out from under it because the individual mandate's gone. And so, you know, we need to take these, you know, these things into reality and just quit thinking about, you know, maybe the politics of it all, or let's just talk about the fiscal reality. Arkansas has a bloated government, and if we keep overcommitting ourselves to have to fund welfare programs for able-to-work adults who are not working, the rest of us who get up and go to work every day are suffering because of that. You know, our taxes have to be here, can't be lowered in order to sustain this big government behemoth, really.
Yeah, and Paul, let me bring up one other issue, you know, but that didn't matter before that does matter now. This is a failed business model, or has a failed point in the business model. The failed point is that when people enroll in Arkansas Works, we're paying for them $500 a month, and the administration is taking a lot of credit, and deservedly so, for reducing those rolls. And they've done a great job. They inherited that. They've done a good job and worked real hard to reduce those rolls. However, there's no mechanism in place to prevent that from continuing. Mm-hmm. What I mean by that, when somebody enrolls, the state starts paying $500 a month to the insurance company. It may take us a month, it may take us a year to find out that they don't qualify. Now, if you and your private insurance, Paul, or the listeners and their private insurance, if they did that and their insurance companies found out that they had fraudulently enrolled or they just made an error, they would be sued, they would be recouped. If you were a government provider or a Medicaid provider and you had patients on your roll that shouldn't be receiving Medicaid, all that money would be recouped. Mm-hmm. You would have the inspector general at your door, but not so with Arkansas Works. With Arkansas Works, people just enroll, we start paying. And that is a built-in inherent error to the program, and there will always be an error rate. before, again, it didn't matter because the feds picked up all of it. But now that it's on the state dime, you can see DHS scrambling, get rid of those people, because now we are the ones paying for it.
Yeah, so you can really kind of tell, this was always about, if the administration gets serious, you actually can, attempt to shrink the rolls. But it's all about, what's the current incentive? And I think the incentive is now shifted, and we now know that this is unsustainable. It always has been. Now we're talking with State Representative Dan Sullivan. Dan, I wanted to ask you. I saw this headline a couple of days ago that UAMS to cut 600 positions in order to meet their budget. I want to know if you've been following that story. I also have another headline here: UAMS shakes up Conway Hospital rivalry. Have you been following any of this stuff? Do you know anything about it?
Yeah, very closely, and thank you for asking, Paul. They are UAMS. Their budget hearing is today at 1:00, and I've got a bunch of questions for them. But part of it, Paul, is not due just to UAMS. It's due to the legislature. The legislature uses UAMS often as what we call a pass-through. There are, DHS calls pass-through. DHS has employees that are paid for by UAMS, but they actually work at DHS. DHS runs a Head Start program down here. UAMS runs a Head Start program down here in Little Rock. They run several businesses, and they get federal money and state money, and we call it a pass-through. I heard you talk about GIF money today. Essentially, we have a government pass-through. Essentially, the legislature uses UAMS to fund employees that actually work at DHS. That's very similar in principle to GIF money.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to be talking about that some today. The other side of this, there are really two budgets for UAMS: the government state funded and the hospital funded. There's a lot of crossover there, but essentially we are UAMS in a position where they get enhanced reimbursements. They have what's called cost settlements that other hospitals and other businesses do not get. And for UAMS to use that to create a competitive advantage in the free market, I think violates all the principles that I stand for, my core principles of not having government compete in the private sector or against private people. And that's essentially what's happening. And it's happening, they run several businesses where that happens. The DHS has started this managed care program, this PASS, they call it, where, and I won't go into the details we've talked about before in the program, but UAMS is partnering with Blue Cross Blue Shield to form one of the most powerful managed care agencies in the state of Arkansas. And if we're using state dollars to do that, maybe that's just wrong. Now, can they do it, and is it legal? I don't know. But in principle, we should not be funding state institutions. They're actually a college, just like all of our other colleges. Can you imagine up in Northeast Arkansas if Arkansas State University started selling John Deere tractors or started a lawn care service?
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, if you're up here, talking about in the flat land where you have farmers and you already have existing industries that are businesses selling tractors and that sort of thing. That is a very good point. I think that would be very weird. It'd be very strange. People would say, why would the state funded institution start selling tractors?
Well, first of all, Arkansas State, they wouldn't do that.
Right,
They
understand
that what their mission is. And their mission is to help everyone, not help themselves with an improved special status in a competitive market. And I hope UAMS will take that same position, that they want to be a helper to all and in the network for helping all of our states and not just helping themselves. I had legislation last session that would have stopped some of this competition. And I met with the administration at UAMS, and they said, Dan, we'll do a better job of this, and we'll correct some of these things. It never happened. And essentially, they started this, they escalated their participation in the private network, in the private sector. So, again, I'm just real concerned about that, and hope we can get to some answers during the session today.
So tell us, I have a text message from a listener wanting you to kind of reiterate, what meeting are we talking about here that has to that concerns UAMS?
Yes, their budget hearing is today at 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And we're going to go over their budget today at 1.
Okay.
And, I sound like you have some listeners down here in Little Rock that are very aware. Of course, UAMS is one of the largest employers in the state.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the largest in the public sector. They run a Head Start. This is a pass-through for child abuse centers, for our violence protection centers, and they're all good things. So in and of themselves, the $500,000 we spend on a project, in and of itself is a good thing. But how are they managing it? And are they the appropriate pass-through to be running a child abuse center? There's one in Jonesboro. They do great work.
Mm-hmm.
But is UAMS the group to be overseeing that? What's the outcome? And those are the questions that I'll ask today. So when you manage an event, what's the outcome? How are they doing?
We got to go to break, but Dan Sullivan, one more question. I'm going to put you on the spot.
Okay.
Is this, you are speaking out for liberty, and you're specifically speaking out, against the current status quo with UAMS. Do you think that's why maybe you have a primary opponent who is backed by the medical community and all the hospitals and everything else?
Well, I would think that would be a very good reason for, yes, I do. I think that's fair. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money flowing to my opponent. When you look at where the money's coming from, that's exactly where the money's coming from.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you speaking.
Maybe you can get him to come on the show, Paul.
Well, maybe. I haven't had a return phone call yet. Dan Sullivan, State Representative for District 53. I appreciate it, sir. Be safe down there at the Marble Palace.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty, folks. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
iTex is your first choice for cost-effective IT services. Protecting your business means protecting your data. Are you tired of unpredictable and expensive spikes in IT spending? Using iTex will prevent downtime and loss of employee productivity, and do it all with an affordable, predictable budget. iTex is the premier managed service provider for small and medium businesses. They help their clients put IT to work to earn your business more money, and you should contact them today for a free consultation. 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Hi, I'm Brad Keselowski, driver of the number 22 Discount Tire Ford Mustang. When I'm racing, my crew chief sets my tire air pressure. If it's not just right, I can lose speed and grip. When it comes to your tires, you need to be the crew chief. Check your air pressure once a month and before road trips. Properly inflated tires help optimize safety, handling, and fuel economy.
A message from the U.S. Tire Manufacturers Association.
Welcome to the Arkansas Obamacare Hotline. We would be more than happy to help you enroll in Arkansas Obamacare today. We just need a little information about you. Let's get started. If you're disabled, pregnant, or looking for medical care for your child, the program is currently full, and there's no doctors to see you. Please hang up now. If you're an able-bodied adult, please press 1. If you're currently employed, we're sorry, but you most likely do not qualify for the program. Please quit your job and call back later. If you don't work and instead play video games all day with your cats in your grandmother's basement, please press 1. If you've never lived in Arkansas, press 1. If you currently live in another state, press 1. If you recently purchased a home in New Jersey for $750,000, please press 1. If your current identity has previously been used by another person, was created before your actual date of birth, or doesn't really exist, please press 1. Congratulations! It sounds like you're the perfect candidate to receive Arkansas Obamacare. Please stay on the line, and a hardworking DHS employee will be with you as soon as possible. While you're waiting, feel free to relax as your ambitions to gainful employment fade away. PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, good morning to everybody out there. So coming up here in the next large segment, we'll be talking to State Representative Josh Miller. You don't want to miss that. But real quick, kind of following up here, we've been talking about just briefly, intermittently, the public corruption trial of John Woods. It actually hasn't commenced yet. It was supposed to commence back in December. And then, of course, it didn't because there was evidence of, secret recordings that the defense didn't know about, they said, and that sort of thing. But it all revolves around general improvement money and essentially laundering the money to where the legislators get a cut of what they give back to the community, for their public service. So former State Representative Mike Neal pleading guilty to getting $38,000. And now that led to the indictment of John Woods, Randall Shelton, Orrin Paris, these guys from, Ecclesia, Orrin Paris III, Ecclesia College, where essentially the idea is you pay for access to get the money, then the consultant that the entity hired to get the government money, throws a kickback to the legislature. So, it's basically just a, interesting money laundering scheme. Very similar, actually not as what John Woods is accused of doing is much more complicated than if you go look at the sworn FBI affidavit that mentions Senator Jake Files accusing him of wire fraud. Of course, he hasn't been indicted yet or any charges, and he still maintains that he's innocent. But if you look into that sworn FBI affidavit under penalty of perjury where they say he just took general improvement funds, had his employee go open up a bank account, transferred her the money, had her take out cash, and then, he pocketed the cash. I mean, that's all in that FBI affidavit. A much less complicated money laundering scheme, if you can believe it. By the way, Senator Jake Files is still in office after that. He's also still the chair of the Senate Revenue and Tax Committee. Isn't it amazing that Governor Asa Hutchinson hasn't publicly called for Senator Jake Files to resign? I haven't harped on that in a long time, but it needs to happen. The Republican Party of Arkansas should call on Senator Jake Files to resign, and yet that hasn't happened either. Kind of tough to take the moral high ground when you're compromising so much. Back in a minute.
Senators are cashing big checks, folks, out of legislation they pushed.
So, I mean, we're on an unsustainable trajectory. I mean, you would agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely. We are in financial trouble. It's election year, folks, so you're going to have all this stuff. You will not know till a year from now how bad things are. If the economy rebounds and has miraculous gains this next year, it might sustain it.
Yeah, the 4% growth, possibly. That's something. Yeah,
like that. I mean, you're going to have that. we are so far behind because you have to understand, and this is some of the things I'm going to come out in more figures of showing how and where we're at. When Governor Huckabee left, he said he left almost $1 billion surplus. We spent almost $1.5 billion less than what Governor Hutchinson proposes, and Governor Hutchinson this last year had no surplus. He was sitting there, and I'm like, he's trying to brag about coming up with $64 million surplus next year, possibly?
Yeah, possibly.
On a $5.6 billion budget. Folks, if you wanted a 10% cushion going in next year of $5.6 billion, it would be $560 million.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Governor Hutchinson, in the real world, and trying to have a cushion in the next year that folks have to scrimp and save and get by when things are costing so much more, like insurance, if you're working harder, paying more for less coverage while people are working less and getting 100% free insurance on Obamacare like Governor Hutchinson and John Gilmore love. But you're sitting there doing that, and if you want a 10% cushion, so Governor Hutchinson, by your own figures, you are $500 million off of what a real-world, normal, nice cushion would be going into the next year. Unacceptable.
Last question, and then we got to go. We're talking with Senator Brian King. I mean, our spending is out of control, and I'm going to go over these numbers again. His first year, we increased $133 million from the year before. Second year, 140. Third year, 160. Now, 172 is the projection. We really can't afford to do tax cuts, or significant ones for the people, when we're spending so much more money every year. I mean, right?
Yeah, and that's the truth about things. And folks, I'm going to tell you, I tell people all the time, you know what? I'm a farmer. I sit here and we have to go out. You know what you do? You cut spaces, do everything else, see what kind of, what the hay's in the barn type thing. We also don't know in our world today, what if something happens in North Korea? What about another terrorist attack? We have a never-know world. It's a dangerous world. You have to prepare for it. Asa Hutchinson has our state so financially ill-prepared for anything at all, and he goes out there and misleads people. And then John Gilmore sits there and says, that's conservative budgeting? I mean, applied to who? Nancy Pelosi?
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back to the program, everybody. Good morning. Thanks so much for being with us. Send me a text or a phone call, 870-275-9799. Also, watch us live on Facebook. We're up and running at facebook.com/Conduit News. Welcome back to the program. One of the most conservative state representatives in Arkansas, politician, really one of the most conservative political minds that there is, State Representative Josh Miller, District 66. That's the Heber Springs area. Josh, welcome, sir.
Hey, thank you, Paul. Always good to be with you.
Absolutely. So, are you down at the Marble Palace listening to some of these budget hearings, or are you staying away? What are you doing?
I went down Tuesday morning, and I listened to the governor and heard a few other things. Took care of some other business, and then I'm going back. I'm planning on going back this morning, but man, I just had to work because somebody's got to generate some tax revenue to pay for all that stuff. And I feel like maybe that's where part of my responsibility lies.
Yeah,
I don't know.
To continue to put the nose to the grindstone, continue to work and generate that tax revenue for the almighty government.
That is it.
Well, okay, so some developments. I want to get your thoughts on this. You have the beginning of the week. You have a tax farce meeting. And then the guy that they got, the lifelong liberal Democrat, Randy Bauer, he doesn't even have the right tax brackets. So they have another meeting that wasn't planned in the afternoon, and they fire the guy. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I would never be one to say I told you so. But I will say this, that there were several of us who, after hearing about this and looking into it just a little bit, had said, this is a bad idea. For one, we're wasting, I don't remember, what was it, $300 and something thousand or something like that of taxpayer money for somebody to come in and do the job of the tax force. So that didn't make sense in the first place. And then the selection of the guy that they picked was atrocious. And so, this doesn't, hey, I guess I'd give him credit for realizing they screwed up and firing him. I guess they could have kept it going, but anyway, they should never been in that situation to begin with. This whole thing's just been a joke.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and of course, you say you give them credit for doing the right thing, and I think a lot of people are like you, and they knew they were in a bad spot. Of course, you have leadership saying, no, we got our money's worth. It was still a good idea, but this is just time. It's time now to part ways. It's like, come on, man. Let's just admit defeat here, admit that we made a mistake. Everybody makes mistakes, but here's one where you really just can't avoid to not admit it just makes you look, I think, more incompetent, honestly.
You're exactly right. The first step to looking intelligent is admitting where you're wrong, which is what I do a lot of often.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda, Josh Miller, I want to know about this spending increase. Okay, so we had an amazing example of carefully crafted language yesterday. The headline in the Gazette was correct. $172 million increase proposed in spending by Governor Asa Hutchinson. And yet you had other people that, the governor's office was saying, no, it's a $100 million cut, confusing people. I had a phone call yesterday afternoon, somebody say, what is the truth here? And I had to say, well, it's just, to me, it's outright deception because it's not a $100 million cut. You're just claiming it's a cut because it was all about the proposal. He proposed to spend $100 million more last year. Now he's proposing to spend $100 million less, but it's still $172 million increase from the year before. What are your thoughts to the fact that we can't seem to shrink government in Arkansas, State Representative Josh Miller? We keep spending more money.
Well, you just said it, Paul. We just cannot manage to find our conservative backbone, period, and tighten up the spending belt here. It is very confusing to people, very deceptive. People, hear some sound bites here and there, and hear, this is a net spending reduction over what was projected last year based on some other projections down the road, and then we look around and we circled around the ballpark and been to the moon and back, and so basically we're spending $64 million less than what we were projected to spend 2 years ago when, just a whole line of just junk, man. And the bottom line, the numbers don't lie. You can look, people need to know, what did the state of Arkansas spend last year or in the current fiscal year? What are we set to spend? And then we look at okay, what are we proposing now? Which is what it sounds like these headlines are doing. And you wind up with $172 or $3 million, whatever it is, additional amount that is being spent. Lord, I just sounded like a redneck right there. That's being spent over what we spent the last time around. Now there's no way around that. But they know that, so they're not going to talk about that. And they're going to go out and say, well, we have cut spending. We're slashing government. We have cut spending. But they make all those statements based off of projected spending. Well, Paul, I can project that I'm going to spend $5 million in the year 2018. Personally, I'm projecting right now on your radio, I'm going to spend $5 million. But you know what? I'm going to come. I bet you I can come back on your radio in about a month and say, you know what? I have cut spending for 2018 by $4,950,000. I've experienced a $4.9-something million cut in spending. Now, how stupid is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but that's what's going on here.
Yeah, and so it's a game. How much of this do you think has to do with it being an election year and the governor's facing a primary opponent in Jan Morgan?
Well, I think it all has to do with that. I unfortunately, I have lost confidence that we were actually going to budget conservatively, and then when Miss Morgan started getting in the race, I thought, well, hey, you know what? Maybe this will kind of steer us back in the other direction, and it has steered the conversation back in the other direction, but it hasn't steered the actual work enough. And that's that's the thing that folks just have to know, is that we are still continuing. I mean, 173 million more.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, how conservative would it be to just say to me, this is not being real conservative, but to just say, you know what, we're not going to spend any more than we spent last year.
Mm-hmm.
How hard is that?
How hard is that? Apparently, it's really hard because we haven't done it ever in any year since Governor Hutchinson has been here, and that's what's so discouraging about this. And I like how you said, and basically he's trying to pivot to the right, or appear to pivot to the right, but there's actually no substance there. And I would suggest it's just realistically impossible for there to be any substance, because for 3 years he's budgeted and governed one way. To think that you can turn that around and there aren't lasting effects, in a month's time or 3 months' time or whatever, is just unrealistic. There are consequences from what you do. Just like any business owner, you try to plan out not just a year ahead, a couple of years ahead. That's exactly what he's been doing. Well, you would think. In his mind, the things have been built up. Government has grown to such a degree, it's almost like we have to spend an extra $172 million next year because of our commitments, which is what brings us to the next point, which would be Arkansas Works. Go ahead, though, first.
Well, you're exactly right about that. I mean, here's the deal. The rhetoric has gone to the right, but the budgeting hasn't. And then here's a little side note on that, and this may be something you were fixing to get into, but Brian King pointed this out Tuesday after the governor was finished and we were discussing the DFNA was presenting the budget, and the whole deal, the governor's office, DHS, been bragging about, we've cut 100 and something thousand people off Medicaid. Well, in 2016, when it was election year, I think when the governor had hired somebody to run against me and a few other candidates, he was out here saying that we had to have Arkansas Works, also known as Medicaid expansion, also known as Obamacare. We had to have that. We had to have all these people signed up on Medicaid, or there was going to be a hole in the budget and no more potholes in any highway in the state of Arkansas were ever going to get filled. We were going to run out of asphalt. We won't be able to pave roads, and we do have a serious highway problem. But our highway budget would be, nil and void if we didn't pass Medicaid expansion again. Mm-hmm. Well, now what's changed? What has changed from then to now? And now we're out here bragging about we got rid of 100-something thousand people, which I'm all for, and I applaud the governor's office and DHS for scrubbing the rolls and eliminating people that are ineligible and all this kind of stuff. I'm not knocking that at all. I want to be very clear about that. But I'm just wanting to, this is an example of rhetoric here and how it's misleading and deceptive. What has changed over the last year and a half that has gotten us to where we don't, we can get rid of the folks on Medicaid, but we don't have a hole in the budget. Anyway, I maybe am digressing.
No. You're certainly saying, everything I agree with. And so the last question, we need to cap this enrollment. I mean, at this point, right? You got that through the committee last session to cap enrollment on Arkansas Works, so we can have at least a knowable cost. And then if somebody drops off, they can't sign back up. The governor didn't like that proposal. Why not?
Well, we did. We got it through the committee in the House. Got it through it passed on the House floor. Died over in the Senate committee. I think Senator John Cooper and some other staunch conservatives helped defeat it. But the governor didn't like it. They said it was an artificial cap. Now I challenged them on that. I said after the deal was going to be, we were going to submit the bill called for DHS to submit a waiver to CMS, to the federal government, to allow us to cap enrollment, to freeze enrollment after I think the date was July the 1st. And I said, no, there's nothing artificial, because after July the 1st, how many people we have is how many we have. It'll never go above that, just in the Medicaid expansion part. This had nothing to do with traditional Medicaid. No grandmas were going to get kicked out of the nursing homes or anything like that. This was just the Medicaid expansion part. But, they wanted to do it their way, and so far that has yet to happen. Mm-hmm. It has yet to happen. And, they say they're waiting on the federal government or whatever. I don't know, but I am in favor of bringing this enrollment freeze back up.
Yeah.
And I know some others are as well, and let's just see. Let's see what happens with it.
Yeah, let's see what happens. All right. Well, State Representative Josh Miller, sir, I appreciate it. Be safe down at the Marble Palace, and good luck to you. It's always a pleasure.
Hey, thanks a lot, Paul. Appreciate you having me on.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. So, hey, folks, I'm going to shift gears here, and I'm going to show you. So that's State Representative Josh Miller. I'm going to show you a polar opposite montage of a Republican who was for almost every tax increase that was proposed last session. He's also really interesting to listen to. His name from Northwest Arkansas is State Representative Dan Douglas, and I compiled this little ditty sometime last year. Take a listen.
In 1972, I bought a Led Zeppelin 4 album for the song Stairway to Heaven. Let me tell you about the internet tax. Let me just explain this to you, okay? I wear Wrangler blue jeans, all right? Why? Because they're cheap. I'm buying for $19.95 a pair. And they make my booty look better, so I'm told. Main Street in Arkansas today is bleeding, and they are bleeding because they are at a disadvantage to the online retailers, and it will tell you how much money you have spent with VictoriaSecret.com or wherever you shop. In 1974, I bought a Doobie Brothers 8-track tape for the song Blackwater on it. Anybody remember that one? It was good. Who have chosen to do business in this state. Now, people say, what are we going to do if this passes and we have all that money? That's for us to decide. But I ask you, what are we going to do if we do not pass it and we lose our brick and mortar stores, our stores that employ our citizens in our towns?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make just a couple of comments. One, Mr. Waters said that this is an unconstitutional bill, and it is. We can either fund the future of Arkansas, we can either take care of our Main Street businesses, or we can just say to hell with it.
In 1995, I bought a CD, a Shania Twain CD. It had a song on it I liked and I wanted. Whose bed have your boots been under?
Whose bed have your boots been under? Whose bed have your boots been under?
They're closing the limited, whatever they sell, I don't know. We see what the budget is. Everybody wants, or a lot of people want to cut taxes. Other people want to fund certain projects. We have to have money to do that. If you have special projects, if you want to fund pre-K, you have to vote for this bill. If you want to fund highways, you could vote for this bill. We have to decide how to divvy it up. In total, this could amount to $150 million a year or more. That's my viewpoint on this. I don't consider it a new tax. In 2011, I downloaded a Lady Gaga song, Born This Way. Any woman that wears a meat dress, I've just got a lot of respect for, you know.
And for the record, I always try to get a good-looking woman sitting beside me.
And after it passed out of the Transportation Committee overwhelmingly, I did what a lot of us do, especially when we get older. Representative Hendren, I went into the men's room, and as I was standing there staring at the wall, as we all do, I heard a voice beside me. It was a man that said, now listen to this. The man said, one thing you didn't mention.
And for the record, I always try to get a good-looking woman sitting beside me. Which school you want to close, which prison you want to shut down. Or are we going to draw lots to throw people out of nursing homes?
Are we?
How are we going to fund these issues? We all know that. We passed medical marijuana here. I didn't know we'd realized we'd started smoking it yet.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
All right, folks, got to take a break. You're listening to Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. Back in a minute. This is for all you big government establishment Republicans out there. Hope you're listening. I keep a close watch on these votes of mine. I keep my finger in the wind all the time. I vote big government, and you will pay with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, there's always an excuse not to shrink government. It's much easier just to toe that line. I find it very easy to be rhino blue. I find I'm not alone when failing to come through. Yes, big government, I'm a fool for you. 'Cause every time I toe that line. Legislative sleight of hand would be an accurate description. Or you could just say, they can't quit towing that party line. As sure as night is dark and day is light, I'll vote big government both day and night. And act like I'm shocked when it all comes to light.
'cause every time I toe the line. You know, the phrase toe the line is the equivalent of toe the mark, both of which mean to conform to a rule or standard. You could also call it the status quo. Tax and spend, I'm always on your side. I love writing government checks that I cannot hide. Buying people's votes always turns the tide, 'cause every time I toe the line. The Oxford Dictionary Word Histories. The idiom toe the line, from an athletics analogy, originated in the early 19th century. I hope you don't watch these votes of mine. Hope you don't see through the lies and slime. 'Cause I plan on spending with your dime. 'Cause every time I toe the line. You know, toeing the line is what the folks down in Little Rock call progress.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. Hey, thanks so much for being with us. So that was kind of a good parody segue of I Walked the Line, Johnny Cash. So tomorrow is Friday, right, Joe? Okay. So for everybody that's new listening to the show, you don't know much about us. On Fridays, it is one of the best days of the week because the best day of the week, Joe says in the other room. Johnny Cash Friday. It's a day where we try to listen to as much Johnny Cash music as we can, while at the same time peppering in the news and events of the day and the week. So you don't want to miss Johnny Cash Friday. Text me your requests. If you want to hear a specific Johnny Cash song, we would love to play it for you. You can text 870-275-9799. Do it now, because once the rotation, it's kind of hard. You know, we go ahead and set the list. Well, it'll probably be tomorrow morning sometime, but so you know, 870-275-9799. Text us your Johnny Cash requests. It's always a lot of fun because, you know, Johnny Cash, right? An Arkansas tradition, great music, and who doesn't want to start now? It used to be Friday afternoon. Now you're Friday morning with some, I don't know, some great country music from the Man in Black. Do what now? Yeah. You could, well, still, I mean, you're technically, Joe, you're still starting your weekend. The beginning of your weekend, a lot of people's weekend starts on Friday. Maybe more like Friday afternoon, but still, you get the point. I mean, everybody loves to wake up on Friday morning, you know, if you have the weekend to kind of do what you want to do. All right, so that's all the time that we have for today. I want to remind everybody that you can get old broadcasts of this program. Just go to facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News. If you missed the first hour of the program, it's going to be available here in just a moment, as soon as we sign off here. So I appreciate it. I'll see you guys tomorrow morning for Johnny Cash Friday. Arkansas, be safe.